For centuries, people all around the world, from Hindus to Vikings to Native Americans, have been united by their belief in another world deep beneath our feet. The ancient Greeks had their underworld. Christians have a fiery hell where sinners endure eternal torment in the afterlife. Even the scientist Edmund Halley posited a hollow earth theory in 1692 in an attempt to explain shifts in the Earth's magnetic fields. And of course, in folklore, the magical subterranean realm is where fairies, hobgoblins and, in more recent times, UFOs possibly come from. Are the strange lights we see in the skies caused by visitors from a faraway planet? Or do they come from deep beneath the vast, inaccessible wastes of the Antarctic? Or are they Nazi survivors of their fallen Reich who escaped to a pre-prepared underground lair, taking their superior propulsion technologies with them? Join us on Aliens Explored as we delve into the mysteries of the Hollow Earth.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome listeners to Aliens Explored, a weekly podcast where we discuss things otherworldly. I'm one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly.
And this week we're talking about plot holes. It's the Hollow Earth theory. I've been thinking of all sorts of puns for this, Neil. Is that sad?
Yes, so the Hollow Earth theory. Well, this goes back a long way, doesn't it? I mean, it even goes back to the ancient Greeks believed in the underworld. We have our own Christian hell beneath our feet.
Well, absolutely. But before we really go into it, so actually, I just want to chat to you about something else before we go into it. So, 14 weeks we've been doing this now. It's quite a long time. Now, when I first approached you about doing this podcast, you were unfamiliar with the UFO culture, I think it's fair to say. Would you agree?
I would say. I mean, I had a passing knowledge of it, but nothing in depth.
No, you weren't a geek like I am. How do you feel now? I mean, is it giving you sleepless nights? Are you wondering what the hell's going on? Are you wondering why nobody's looking into this more? Has it changed your perspective? That's what I'm looking for on that question.
It can be bewildering sometimes, and I often think of the George Harrison quote: "The more I learn, the more I realise how little I know." It's kind of opening doors that, oh my God, here's another whole new. It's like that dream when you suddenly notice a new door in your house and you open it and there's a whole wing of the house that you hadn't known about before.
Yes,
that kind of that's and people living there and.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time since I've had a dream like that. I used to really enjoy them.
Yeah, I kind of do. They're kind of unsettling, but they're But yeah, I do get them quite a bit.
I wonder what the dream analyst would say about it. Probably best we stop that conversation.
Yeah, but it's something we're going to have to come back to, isn't it? That what happens in dreams? I mean, do your dreams have a familiar landscape? that's not really real, but that you visit time and time again, and you kind of know your way around a bit, even though you're always getting lost there.
That's definitely a thought, isn't it? Mm. So yeah, no, I just wanted to see, really, because it's something I've been aware and relatively familiar with for quite a long time. But yeah, interesting. So onto the hollow Earth theory then. So this is the theory that there is another world inside this one, and specifically relevant to us, the idea that it is a UFO base of operations.
Yes, so that's why we're talking about hollow Earth, isn't it? Because there is this idea that it's a UFO base, or possibly. I was surprised at how little I could find about this, because I've certainly heard it expressed before. The theory that a lot of the Nazis, who obviously during the Second World War developed superior technology to the Allied powers. They were the first with ballistic missiles and jet planes and supposedly flying saucers. That the idea that they escaped to Antarctica, where they live beneath it and have developed all kinds of new technologies. So when we see a UFO, it's actually a superior technology Nazi craft overflying. That idea.
Well, it comes round again to the. Now, sorry, you keep correcting my pronunciation on this. Hunibau?
Hunibau, yeah.
Hunibau.
Was it actually maybe Hunibau? It might be. I've forgotten how it's.
That one, anyway. So, yeah, that's.
But apparently, Hunibau was how the ancient Greeks referred to people from the north of Europe. So the Nazis kind of adopted that as, they were referring to us.
Okay, and of course, if you go far enough from the north of Europe, you end up in Antarctica and the North Pole, which is what we're talking about. Because
Antarctica, which is actually obviously South Pole, and obviously the major difference between South Pole and North Pole, apart from the amount of ice, is that the South Pole, Antarctica, is actually a continent, whereas the Arctic or the North Pole is simply frozen sea. There's no land there.
Right. Well, the North Pole is the one where they reckon there's a portal into this hollow Earth, isn't it? That you get the videos of UFOs allegedly going in and out.
I thought it was Antarctica, but there seem to be several of these all around the world, including one in England. Is it in Shropshire?
Oh, I didn't know about that one. Well, an actual hole into the Earth in Shropshire, I mean, that'd be fairly easy to investigate.
It would, yeah. Shropshire's not a big place. In fact, there's nowhere. For our benefit of our American listeners, you probably know this, but England is a much smaller place than the United States. I think the CIA website describes the entire United Kingdom as about the size of Oregon and densely populated. We do not have any wide open spaces. There's nowhere where there's no wilderness to speak of that you can wander off into. There's where a Sasquatch could live. There just isn't the room for it.
No, there might have been 500 years ago when most of the UK was covered in woodlands. And indeed, when you go back and you hear about things like Robin Hood living in Sherwood Forest. Sherwood Forest covered about 50% of the UK at the time.
Yeah.
So, it's in context. Now it's a couple of square miles, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you look at Sherwood Forest now, you think, well, how come the Sheriff of Nottingham couldn't hunt down a few bandits living in this copse? Did he seriously lack manpower, or only had enough manpower to send a few blokes in to be ambushed?
it was hundreds of kilometres back in the day. And of course, Robin Hood, probably not real.
Probably not real, or probably an amalgam of outlaw legends. Or,
yes.
The kinds of tales that people tell in pubs that all get amalgamated into, or conflated into one heroic, legendary character.
Indeed. Now, right at the beginning, Neil, so bringing us back onto the Hollow-Earth theory, you mentioned about the historical references.
Yeah,
so the earliest...
Sorry?
Oh, yeah, no, go on.
No. So, yeah, I suppose it's belief systems, really. That's where it starts with. The Greeks with their underworld and the Christians with Christian hell beneath our feet. That's...
Well... Absolutely, and you've got to wonder where these references, these concepts, have come from. Now, the first, if you like, scientific reference to the Hollow Earth that I could find goes back to the 18th century. Edmund Halley of Halley's Comet fame, the astronomer.
It's actually earlier than that, isn't it? It's the 1690s, I think.
Oh, right. Is it 1690s when he suggested
1692, conjectured that the Earth might consist of a hollow shell about 800 kilometres or 500 miles thick.
Right, and that would explain certain unusual compass readings.
What he believed was that there were lots of there were 3 inner concentric shells. So you've got a hollow, a bit like a Russian doll, a hollow sphere inside of another hollow sphere inside of another hollow sphere, and they're kind of rotating independently. It was his theory, or perhaps the conclusion that he arrived at, to explain anomalous compass readings. The fact that magnetic north does shift. It shifts a few degrees every year. It's very early of him to notice that.
Indeed. And yes, this whole, like I say, like a Russian doll. So you've got the cosmic lithosphere or mantle first. Yeah. Then the inner cosmic gravitational limit is the second space, and then the third one is this one where you've got actual living creatures roaming about. The I think he called it the inverse interior world, or Tartarus. Right. And it again has been referred to as like Hades. Or this could potentially be hell. And he postulated that an anvil falling from Earth 9 nights and days would reach Tartarus on the 10th day. Falling. That's a hell of a long time.
You mean if you dropped it down a massive hole from the surface, that's how long? Well, is it 4,000 miles to the centre of the Earth?
Is it 4,000 miles?
4,000 miles. So.
Wow. That's quite a thing. You've got another historical one, because a lot of people, Nazis, again, as you've mentioned, are associated with this quite heavily. But going back to 1811, there was an explorer named Olaf Janssen who claimed to have lived. He'd accidentally gone into this portal, claimed to have lived there for 2 years with 12-foot tall superhumans. Back in 1811.
Back in 1811.
Which is quite
that's quite a claim. Never been independently verified.
Would be a bit hard to, I would imagine.
And was he actually missing for 2 years? Did he go into this cave for 2 years, or did he claim that where he was 2 years had elapsed, even though it might have only seemed like 10 minutes to people who stayed on the people waiting for him outside?
Oh, time dilation effect. We like a good time dilation effect. Not that I'm aware of. I think he went for 2, but he was an explorer, so being gone for a couple of years wouldn't have been unusual for him.
Right.
He was also a fisherman, but
This might be a random diversion. I remember reading a comic, and I'd be really grateful to any of our listeners who could tell me what it was called. And it was about this boy who found this doorway in his bedroom. It was behind a chest of drawers, but there was this little doorway about 2 foot high, and his dad would go in there and shut the door behind him, and he'd come back about 3 months later with his clothes all in rags, dragging a massive haul of treasure that he'd somehow scattered, and because he wouldn't talk about where he'd been. I'd love to be reminded what that comic was.
Wow, that sounds equally interesting and creepy.
Yeah, what was a relationship you have with your dad?
I did wonder where you were going with his dad came into his room and went through this little door behind a cupboard. Okay. Interesting. Yes, if you know of that one, listeners, then do put poor Neil out of his misery on that.
please do, yes. Now, I'm very interested in the guy who came shortly afterward, named Cyrus Reed Teed.
Not familiar with him.
Oh, right. He was an American physician whose own brand of medicine combined alchemy with zaps of electricity and doses of magnetism. And one day he electrocuted himself so badly that he passed out. And then when he came to, he realised that he was the living incarnation of Jesus Christ. But not only that, he decided that the Earth is actually an inverted sphere, that we live not on the outside of the planet, but on the inside. And then when we're looking up, when we think into the sky, we're actually looking towards the centre of the Earth, where there is this fireball, this source of light. That's where the heavens are. How
do you explain nighttime then? Because we're living in perpetual daylight.
Well, and how do you explain horizons?
How do you explain most of science?
How do you explain most of science? But he started a cult called Koreshanity in Florida to convince the world of his geologic discovery.
Okay. I like to keep an open mind. I think it's fair to say that I'm definitely a believer. I'm going to say that sounds like bull crap.
Well, yes, he formed this cult called the Korashanites, and they invented this machine. They lived on it sounded nice. They lived on a beach commune in Florida, and he created this device called the rectilineator.
That sounds painful.
Which would scientifically, I don't think it actually inserts into anyone's rectum, but it would scientifically measure that the Earth is in fact concave rather than convex. And of course, they deemed it a fantastic success by their own way of measuring it.
Well, if you were to take it to a crater, it would show a concave measurement.
It would,
surely.
Yeah. But if you're standing on the surface, if you're standing on the beach in Florida, looking out to sea, why can you only see so far? And why is it that if you go up somewhere high, climb a big tree or a tower, you can see slightly further? And that when a ship comes over the horizon, it's like it's rising up out of the water. You see the mast first, and then it comes up over the. Why can't you see all the way to? West Florida aligned with Africa, isn't it? So why can't you see all the way to the Canary Islands?
Well, I'm going to ascribe that one to kind of like just another version of the flat earther sort of views. And
yes.
If any of our listeners are flat Earth believers, I'm going to tell you now, it's no.
The show isn't for you.
No, the show's for everyone. I like to think, but no, absolutely do not subscribe to
nonsense like that.
But I mean, we're interested in hollow Earth because of the UFO theory, perhaps the advanced Nazis theories, because the Nazis believed, we know that they believed that the Earth was hollow, and these days it tends to be Nazis who believe that the Earth is flat. You get talking to any flat earther, and it's not long before you're talking about whether the Nazi concentration camps really happened. You know, if you draw a Venn diagram, there's a very, very big overlap between those two belief systems.
Good.
Because I suppose it's the flat Earth belief is it's just a kind of belief that says, well, we don't believe anything. It's almost like a badge to say, you know, nothing is true. Nothing we're told is true. We're lied to all the time. However, we've developed our own theories, which are difficult to believe.
Indeed, and having beliefs and believing in things without requiring proof, that's fair enough. But when you've got, I mean, you know, I'm a person who does that an awful lot, particularly around this subject. You know, I believe a lot of things that are not proven. However, if science comes along and says, well, it's absolutely not the case, you know, and here is the evidence, then I would stop believing that thing. You know, because you know, belief shouldn't be a binary, you either do or you don't. You know, it should be evolving, and you should be developing as new science and new things come to the fray. And
you have to change your opinions as more scientific evidence becomes, or not just in the field of science, in any sphere of knowledge. Anything that you might previously believe, if you're suddenly presented with new information that doesn't quite fit that, then you have to adjust what you believe. Belief just fills the gap where you just don't know. It's just speculation, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
That's why, you know, you can't say, well, I know that there is a God, because where does belief come in then? If you know it for sure, then there's no faith involved, is there? There's no belief system. Now, we're talking about these people who come up with these themes about how the Earth is hollow, that there's actually an inner world or a series of concentric rotating spheres.
Spheres of knowledge.
Spheres of knowledge. or even just a vast warren of caves going very, very deep, but somehow down there is sustainable life. There's some sort of sunlight, something that substitutes for sunlight, you know, that Journey to the H.G. Wells' Journey to the Centre of the Earth would be very boring if they were just down in a dark cave wandering around. Yeah, they travel a huge distance, so they go down in England and come up in Iceland or something like that. Or they travel a long way.
Something like that.
They encounter dinosaurs and things like this. But it's only very recently that the actual structure of our planet has been scientifically understood. I think it was in the 1920s when it was first, when a scientist first put forward that the Earth was actually a solid crust encasing a liquid or molten centre.
And then you've got the different, but given the
different layers of things, that's it's very recent, and I think the idea of shifting tectonic plates, that I don't think that was known about until the 1960s or even later. This is all quite, so you can see why people 100 years previously could come up with all sorts of. It's a belief system filling a void where there's no knowledge.
Well, that's it, but then these modern ideas, they are just theories because they are as yet unproven. I mean, there are no drill bits that can go all the way to the centre of a planet.
I saw something just now about the deepest hole on the planet. There's a borehole that someone drilled, and it's the biggest hole in the. But it's only about 7 miles deep.
Yeah,
straight down.
Right.
Well, as we know, it's 4,000 miles to the centre of the Earth.
It's not even through the crust, is it? 7 miles, or might be barely through the crust.
Yeah, but
it's certainly not very far down at all. So yeah, the idea that it's hollow is still a possibility in that respect. And I'll be honest, before we started, before we said we were going to talk about this, I had always felt that the Hollow Earth thing was a bit of a fringe theory. I'd never really given it much credence or much thought, mainly because, it's a Nazi base, and I do tend to switch off a little bit when that sort of thing gets mentioned. But looking into this has actually got me quite intrigued. One of the things, however, I found really interesting, that there is an organisation called Hollow Earth, and they are a sort of quasi-scientific organisation. They do try and do proper research into this. They've had, in recent history, so 2006 and 2014, they were going to have expeditions to find these access points, either in Antarctica or Arctica. I'm not sure which, but
I know the Nazis sent an expedition to the Antarctic in about 1938.
Right, but on two occasions, this group were going to do this, and they got the funds together, they got the volunteers together, and everything. And in both cases, there were a series of disasters that befell them that prevented it from happening. Now, I've got to wonder, is that just really unfortunate, or is somebody keeping them, or is it hapless? Is it incompetence? I don't think it's that kind of disasters. I think it was more, unforeseen stuff. But could it have been basically sabotage? Could it have been people wanting to keep them from the truth?
It's an interesting idea. A whole series of accidents, but I suppose, we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about the possibility of a vast underground labyrinth beneath the Antarctic, a continent that probably was once habitable before it shifted down to the bottom of the globe, and just became covered in an ice sheet. People living beneath that, probably not that deep, not miles underground, well, possibly hundreds of feet underground. They could have, as the continent drifted and the weather started getting worse and worse, they dug their underground labyrinths deeper and deeper and deeper. But you would imagine they would remain fairly primitive people, wouldn't you? And they would have starved to death probably. But there are cultures all over the world, in Hindu mythology, Mexican folklore, Middle-aged German, Russia, Italian, Dante, of course, with his Inferno, Native American mythology. It's Brazilian mythology. It's all over the world. But of course, there's good scientific evidence as to why the Earth can't be hollow.
Well, what we do know is that there are large pockets of, within the crust itself, there are large pockets of emptiness. Now, there's probably gas in there, or but it's not matter. So, the idea that there's spaces. No, I can see it. I can see it.
There was a question on QI, a whimsical quiz show over here in England, hosted by, I think it's Stephen Fry at the time. Do you know what shape a raindrop is?
Isn't it pear-shaped?
No, it's a perfect sphere. That liquid falling through space will form into a perfect sphere. That's how ball bearings are made. It's called drop forging. They drop this molten material down a massive shaft, cooling it as it goes, and when it hits the bottom, it's a perfectly round and presumably they got the measurements right, perfectly sized ball bearing, and that's how planets are formed. That basically it's matter coming together as it tumbles through space, but it's natural
as it falls down a shaft.
Yeah, as it falls down a shaft. I mean, we are effectively falling, aren't we? Constantly. That's our constant state. A spacecraft in orbit is just falling all the time. It's just maintaining enough motion so that it constantly misses the Earth. It sort of falls past it, so it just keeps falling past. That's how you stay in orbit. So
it's good to hear my acting career's on a natural trajectory.
Yes, it's constant falling. That's the way it goes.
Listeners.
So I mean, two arguments against the possibility of it being significantly hollow are one that is gravity. Well, they're both to do with gravity. One of them is that if the Earth was hollow, it wouldn't attract enough of a gravitational force to keep us on the ground. It would be too insignificant an object, too light.
Okay.
It says the average density of the planet Earth is 5.515 grams per cubic centimetre. And densities of surface rocks are only half that, about 2.75 grams per cubic centimetre. If any significant portion of the Earth were hollow, the average density would be much lower than that of surface rocks. The only way for Earth to have the force of gravity that it does is for much more dense material to make up a large part of the interior. So that would be the liquid nickel iron core in a molten state. And also another gravitational reason is that if it was hollow, if it was just a hollow crust, it would collapse into something more solid.
Unless it was constructed.
Right, now here we go. Hang on to your hats, everyone.
No, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But it's
like the Death Star.
It's an out there thing. Is it a small version of a Dyson sphere? Which is a theory postulated that if you could build a sphere around a sun large enough, then you could basically live on the interior of it like you would a planet. Said to be a lot bigger, and you'd have unlimited source of energy. Yeah. Anyway, let's summarise right there before I get myself into bother.
What was that story? If God had wanted us to have renewable energy, he would have put a big nuclear reactor up there in the sky.
It'd have made it windy. Yeah. Fantastic. So, hollow Earth theory then, Neil. So let's summarise. Where do you sit with it?
I think it's. I don't believe the Earth is hollow. I don't believe the Nazis escaped to the Antarctic and then living there with superior technology, living under the surface of the ice cap. I can understand how. I was surprised to learn how recently the structure of our planet was understood, especially with regard to tectonic plates and continental drift. That's how recently that was discovered. So I can see, yes, that it's all these mythologies about people living underground. I suppose that if people are seeing supernatural beings, if they're talking about fairies or whatever, that they don't come from another dimension, another reality. They've popped up from under the ground. That's where the fairies live and the pixies. So yes, I think I'm going to stay with the science on this and say yes. I can see why people might have believed it, but no, it's not something we should continue to believe any more than the Earth is flat, which apparently no one ever really believed. That even fairly ancient people had worked out that the Earth was curved. That's how they navigated. The Earth was round. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm similar to you to a point. I think let's rule out the Nazi base thing.
Although I thought that's why we were going to talk about it. There's the explanation for UFOs as having come from a Nazi base under the
Well,
Antarctic ice cap.
Here's the thing: we talk about it being substantially, hollow, but they're substantial from a planetary perspective, and I agree. I think the science is highly unlikely that that's feasible, but they're substantial from a human perspective, which is much, much, much smaller. And I think that that is reasonable. I don't think, centre of the earth, H.G. Wells level. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. But the idea that there are large, basically underground caverns, underground spaces, absolutely, I can accept that. And yes, I think if these otherworldly visitors, these UFOs, are going to have a base, then certainly somewhere in an inaccessible place where they can come in and out and hide at leisure, I think that's the way to do it. I think there is some credence to it, and there is enough, certainly anecdotal evidence to support the theory of that. But what do you think, listeners? As ever, we want to know your thoughts, your theories, your beliefs on this subject. So do message us. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook, or by visiting us at aliensexplored.com. And the other thing we want to hear from you, this is episode 14 now. We've been doing this a while. We want to hear what subjects on otherworldly visitation do you want us to talk about? Do let us know. Don't forget to join us next time, though, where we will be discussing a certain Sergeant Russell Yoakum and Lucky 13 and an actual audio recording of a UFO. Very exciting. Smoking gun right there, Neil.
Okay.
Are you excited?
I'll get on it. I'm excited.
I'm excited. But in the meantime, stay safe, keep watching those skies, and maybe take a look beneath your feet every now and then.
Look down that rabbit hole. Have a poking stick.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.